The destruction of Europe's Jews during the Second World War has largely defined the war and our attitudes to it. The attempted industrial killing of an entire European people and its history still chills us. What power does the Holocaust have in today's history of the war? Is the memory receding, forgotten, or is it being misused? Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
It is commonly accepted that the years 1899 to 1939 represent a high point in anti-Semitism in Western societies. During this period, anti-Semitic sentiments surged, leading to significant consequences for European Jews. Before World War II, anti-Semitism was fueled by contradictory stereotypes. Jews were portrayed as both vulgar, money-grabbing capitalists and dangerous revolutionaries. Newspapers and magazines printed anti-Semitic articles and cartoons, and discriminatory practices extended to employment opportunities, social clubs, and housing. In the US, automaker Henry Ford played a major role in spreading anti-Semitic propaganda. His weekly newspaper launched a vicious campaign against what he termed the International Jew. His tirades found an eager audience, including Adolf Hitler, who reprinted them in Nazi publications. After the Nazi Party came to power in 1933, the hostilities towards Jews in Germany became more widespread. The Nazis enacted over 400 anti-Semitic laws between 1933 and 1938. In November 1938, the situation worsened during the targeted pogrom known as Kristallnacht, where hundreds of Jews were tortured, arrested, and thousands of businesses were destroyed. After the outbreak of the World War II, millions of Jews were imprisoned in ghettos across Europe. These ghettos were characterized by abysmal conditions, leading to thousands of deaths from starvation, disease, and poor sanitation. Eventually, the Nazis established extermination camps to liquidate ghetto populations. The Holocaust was inarguably one of the most destructive and murderous events in human history, claiming the lives of up to 6 million Jews.
Our guest today is Maciej Kozłowski, former ambassador of Poland to Israel and an academic historian. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for inviting me.
What was the nature of the Jewish problem, if we can call it that, in Europe in the 1920s and 30s? What was the climate?
Well, the Jewish question, it was a German phrase, Jugendfrage, and that was one of the central issues of the ideology of the Hitler's party. So the anti-Semitism was very vivid in Germany in the late 19th and early 20th century. Then it sort of subdued during the war. Many German Jews fought in the ranks of Wehrmacht and fought very bravely. But then it resurrected during the Weimar Republic as a political issue and also as an issue which helped to sort of blame someone for hardship which Germany was going on after the First World War, all this reparation, hyperinflation, and so on and so forth, and finally great crisis in 30s. So there was a lot of hardship, and if there is a hardship, it's always a tendency to find someone
Yes.
who is responsible. And Jews were very suitable. And therefore, from the very beginning, there were many parties which had some anti-Semitic tones, but the Nazi party was the best in it, and it was one of the keys to the success. It didn't win election, but it got enough votes so that Hitler could form a government and finally take the dictatorial power.
When Germany and the Soviet Union invaded countries like Poland in 1939, then 1940, what was the policy towards Jews then? Was it to exterminate them, or as you seem to suggest when we talked before, that the policy was to was emigration, forced emigration.
That was the policy towards the German Jews in Germany and after Auschwitz in Austria. And I was responsible for this policy, and there were different ideas. Some were suggesting to settle Jews in Madagascar, the famous Madagascar plan. Some there was a plan to settle Jews in near Nisko in the Lublin district, and they even started it. And some Jews were transported to Nisko. It didn't work because for logistic reasons, and they were released. And that was why so many Jews believed that they will be not sent to extermination camps, but they will be resettled, because some of these people from Nisko returned. These were Jews from Germany, from Czechoslovakia, from Upper Silesia. So then many Jews, until the very end, believed that they are being resettled, not exterminated. And this idea were floating, and there were no one, I would say, general idea what to do, until the beginning of the Operation Barbarossa, that means the war with Soviet Union, because until then there was no, I would say, physical extermination of Jews. They were put into ghettos, yes. They were harassed, they were deprived of the means to live, their businesses were confiscated, their money had to be put in the bank, as they couldn't dispose with this money, and so on and so forth. They were harassed. In the same way as the Jews in Germany, German Jews, but they were not physically exterminated. The extermination, in a sense, started in ghetto in that way that there was enormous hunger and diseases, no sanitation, no food, and therefore the mortality, especially in Warsaw Ghetto, the biggest one, was enormous. But that was not a policy that, that someone was shooting. That started with the war with Soviet Union. At first, with Heydrich order, the Germans encouraged locals to kill the Jews, especially in Baltic countries, but also in this small part of Poland, which was occupied by the Soviets. But then, when the Wehrmacht was going more and more east, and more Jews were encountered, because the major Jewish populations were in the east, in the shtetls, yes. In the east, in Ukraine, in Belarus, and so on. The killing of Jews was at first sort of explained as a war necessity, because they were regarded as a possible traitors and so on.
Rather than as a workforce, they were traitors.
Well, it was, Wehrmacht was going pretty fast. So it was not a question of workforce. It was a question of sort of keeping the back of the front secure. But there were more and more, I would say, atrocities being done, this famous Babi Yar massacre and so on. And finally, the Einsatzgruppen, who were responsible for this, I would say, cleaning the security situation after the Wehrmacht was progressing, were not ordered directly to kill the Jews, but there were sort of hints of killing Jews. But this is a famous story when Himmler came to Minsk, and he saw the massacre of Jews, and he couldn't stand it, because it was very hard for German soldiers. And then the idea to build death camps was born. And this idea was born somewhere in the autumn of 41.
And it must have been planned, organised, the railways, the building materials. How did that?
It started in the Lublin district, where this Nisko plan didn't work, and Odilo Globocnik was responsible for building Bełżec Sobibor, later Treblinka. So this started as a way sort of take the burden from the troops.
Yes. How does our concepts of the Holocaust as a reality, when did that take root? Was this a post-war idea, or was it the idea of the Holocaust, the destruction of European Jews? Did that originate actually within the war, even within the war itself?
Well, it evidently originated during the war, and probably without war it wouldn't be possible, because mass killings, when the war is going on, the life is much cheaper than in normal circumstances. Germans already started mass killings with the so-called T4 program, that means killing disabled people or mentally retarded.
Euthanasia, yes.
And actually, the same people who were responsible for T4 were then hired to organize death camps in Holocaust. Exactly the same people.
Did this system of administrative decision-making involve hundreds or thousands of people? How did the whole system grow?
The whole system obviously employed hundreds of people. There were actually 5 death camps, all of them in the former Polish territory, not only in the general government, because Auschwitz was in the territory which was incorporated into Reich. Therefore, Frank said that he's not responsible for Auschwitz when he was asked what's going on. But this major extermination camps, that means Bełżec, Sobibor, Treblinka, Chełmno, were all on the general government, and that was because Germans could do there whatever they wished. There were no local authorities to discuss with. There was no, I would say, questions of ownership of land, all these legal questions. Germans were very strictly legalistic. So they could do whatever they wanted, and therefore they used the territory of general government as a place to exterminate Jews, which were brought from all over the world. And they were even bringing people to be exterminated from Africa.
A final question to you, Mr. Kozłowski. How does the Holocaust stand now in the historiography of the Second World War? Does it still have a paramount position, or is it a relative item now?
Well, it has a very prominent position, because Holocaust became a symbol of ultimate evil. If you want to say that something is the most evil, you use Holocaust, and therefore it is very heatedly debated if you can compare other atrocities which are happening nearly all the time to Holocaust. And the Holocaust historians, especially Jewish Holocaust historians, stress the absolute that it was something unique, that it was something which never happened before, and fortunately will never happen after. That means mass murder on such scale, because there were, and mass murder without any reason, because that was expensive, that was depriving Germany of the free labor. So from the point of view of the war interest of Germany, it was counterproductive.
Yes, it's irrational.
So it was irrational. That was, I would say, ideology put into the most evil use.
Yes. Obviously, it's still This is still a heated debate today. This is still fascinating subjects to be studied. Thank you very much for coming on to our programme, Maciej Kozłowski.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Great to have you. That's all we have time for today. Do join us again next time for How We Got Here.